and welcome back to another episode of Story Hive on location with Bowen and Mimi. And we are on location in gorgeous Revelstoke, BC today with the gorgeous Kristen Begg from Ontario originally, but lives here in this amazing neighborhood. And thank you for having us in your backyard today. Kristen grew up in Ontario and went to university there, and during university experienced some challenges with academics. And later in life, after experiencing that, decided to turn that experience into her life passion and a business opportunity, and created Cortex ADHD coaching.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about lots of things today, but let's start with, you just came back from holiday in Ontario.
I did. I was actually just in Kingston, which is where you're headed pretty soon, actually, which is awesome. But yeah, I was there for 2 weeks and seeing all the family. It was great.
Yeah. Do you keep in touch with any of those friends from university days?
No.
No?
No, I actually didn't have a huge social life in university. I was working full-time and studying full-time, and that's all I could balance was that. So my social life definitely dove, but working downtown Vancouver at the time, that was social enough.
Right.
So I feel like I checked that.
Yeah. What were you studying?
My first degree was in peace and conflict studies, and my second degree is in international relations and economic development.
Wow.
A little far away from where we are now,
yes.
But yeah.
Okay, we can
Absolutely.
talk a lot about that too. Can you maybe tell us a bit about those challenges initially? When did you notice that you were struggling maybe more than some of the other students, or how did that happen for you?
Definitely. It was pretty obvious in my first semester that I was smart, I was intelligent, but things were not landing. It was my study skills, they didn't exist. I didn't know how to ask for help. I was ridden with guilt and shame, not knowing how to ask for help. I didn't have any diagnoses, so I thought accessibility service was strictly for people who had them. All this mess, and I just brute forced my degree, nearly failed out, and didn't actually realize how hard it was until later. Actually, I thought everyone struggled this much in university, but I guess it was just me in a lot of ways. Well, not just me, but felt like it.
Right. And I didn't go to university, so I'm not sure about the supports that are available now compared to at that time. And so I imagine that's changed quite a bit as well.
I like to think so, and definitely with a lot of university students on my current caseload, it all comes down to self-advocacy and knowing what types of resources and what type of support would help you academically. The Center of Accessibility typically gives the standard, we can help you with A, B, C, but there's so much more that you can ask for if you know how to ask. So that's what I help students with now, actually, is making sure they're getting the accommodations that make sense for them.
Were you living at home during that university experience?
No, living on my own. So that was a whole thing too, but that was actually probably my favorite part, living by myself.
Right. I think Bowen can relate to that, probably, would you say? Yeah. So the challenges that started coming up for you, was it getting things in on time? Was it just not knowing how to structure the workload?
All of it. And leaving it to the last minute, and then everything is important, didn't know how to prioritize, half-assing everything, trying to turn it in, handing things in late. It was awful. And I wouldn't email asking for extensions because I was too shy, so I was just chronically losing marks all the time. It was not fun.
Right.
Yeah.
And feeling a sense of embarrassment or shame that you couldn't
Lots. And guilt. Because I didn't even want to tell my parents how badly I was struggling, or anyone for that matter, because I'm smart. I do really well at things. I'm reasonably intelligent, and having university kick me in the butt right off the bat was very eye-opening and really embarrassing in a lot of ways. Yeah. Hi.
Hello, darling. It's always nice to have visitors. We were just hearing the story about the combing of your beautiful dog and how the hummingbirds
We'll take his fluff and make bird's nests out of it.
Oh, that's fun.
Yep.
Yeah. This is a moment of squirrel,
Yep.
dog, hummingbird.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
You said you didn't have a big social circle then at
Mhm.
that time as well.
Mhm.
So that must have felt very isolating.
It did. And when you have peers who struggle in the same way that you do, it normalizes it in a lot of ways. Where if you feel like you're on your own island, it becomes a lot harder to ask for help and to self advocate and realize that you actually do need more support than you realize as well.
I feel like back then too, like I would imagine it was a lot harder to kind of talk about, ADHD and those kind of things, and like it's not something that like nowadays, like I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I have ADHD. Da, da, da. It's like a pretty common thing that people are talk about and are comfortable talking about. Like, what was that like back then? Was it a bit more like taboo or?
It was definitely less of a conversation, I'd say, and more male oriented because little boys have ADHD when they can't sit still in class. Like, that's ADHD. It wasn't a 25-year-old female who's struggling in different ways. That's not exactly the classic ways you see ADHD. And that's also why a lot of women in their 20s and 30s nowadays are getting diagnosed with ADHD because they're missed when they're younger. And that's a whole amazing thing as well that that's happening. But there's definitely a lot more education about ADHD nowadays, which is amazing.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is it's very true. When you went to school, it's talked about all the time, and I think it's almost uncommon to meet someone who doesn't have something, some kind of a spectrum challenge or
Yeah. Which is also a double-edged sword in a way because it's getting romanticized on social media, having ADHD, having autism, that having ADHD is a superpower and all these amazing things come with ADHD, where that is true to an extent. There's also the real debilitating side of ADHD, which isn't talked about very often. And when people relate to ADHD, they're actually relating to executive function challenges. And every human on the face of planet Earth has executive function challenges. But just because you have EF challenges doesn't mean you have ADHD. So people are saying, I procrastinate, I do this, I do that too, but that doesn't mean you have ADHD, and they're claiming that they do. When really it's just executive function challenges.
Well, and like I found for like myself especially, it's one of those things where it's like after like finding out that I was diagnosed and having that information, it's like, okay, like that helps me understand my brain so much more. And there's still this like, I know how my brain works, and I'm trying to find ways to kind of like work around that or work with it. And at the same time, it's like I found for me, like you kind of get in these like cycles where it's like you get a routine and like, yes, I'm on track, I'm doing it, I'm gonna do it this time, and then like 2 weeks later, it's like you take 2 steps back, and then you're kind of like back where you, and it's like this constant kind of like
push and pull in a sense.
Yeah, like what was your experience kind of like finding ways to manage that or to help people with that?
Routines is probably one of the biggest things I talk about in session with clients is routine. And you're right in the sense that if you build out this big morning routine with 10 steps, you might nail it the first day and the second day, then it slowly dwindles. Where I encourage clients to create anchor points in their routine. So if you're having a low energy day or an I don't want to morning or things are running late, at least you have your anchor points of drinking water, brushing your teeth, and whatever else that might be, just so you are doing pieces of your routine, then you can add in the bits as you go as well. So you're still following through, just in a different capacity, instead of my routine isn't working, because that's not necessarily true. Flexibility needs to be built in.
I'm just thinking about the diagnosis part of it, and Bowen sharing that when he was diagnosed, and then that helped him understand his brain. As a parent, I actually hesitated initially to get a diagnosis, and then as time went by, I thought, yeah, this would be good to know.
Right.
Knowledge is power. But then also decided to not share that information for a couple of years with him because I didn't want him to identify who he was with that.
Yes.
And there's still, I guess, a questioning of whether that was the right way. I mean, we can't regret and go backwards. So whatever, it is what it is.
For sure.
But what are your thoughts on that?
It is very true that people who are diagnosed with whatever, that becomes their identity. So they think, because I have ADHD, I see things through that lens and that lens alone, and not necessarily as underlying reason or justification for things happening is because you have ADHD. That's not your personality. That's not your interest. That's not who you are. It's a piece of you, but it's not all of you. Where I do see clients get really stuck in with the labels and try and container themselves in a way, which isn't the most helpful a lot of the time. So a lot of conversations about like, okay, who are you outside of this diagnosis? What are some things that isn't classic autism that is you still, and that's okay. Both things can exist, and stretching beyond the classic definitions.
And you decided to not get diagnosed, is that right? Or?
In the process.
Yeah.
In the process, yeah. It was actually me supporting a bunch of people with ADHD through my job. I was like, I relate to that, and that, and that, and that. So just more and more was clicking for me in my brain, and I thought, okay, I understand my people a little too well. Maybe I should go on my own journey and figure out what's going on with me and how my brain works, because I know how my brain works. But I think it'd be really cool just to get the language behind it as well.
Yeah, like I'm wondering if this is similar for you, but it's like there's almost kind of a like there's never like I don't know this. There's always a want to like improve myself and to like break these cycles, and so it's like, and when you have people like telling you like, well, like just do better, just just work harder, and it's like, and it's hard not to feel guilty because like you like in your mind it's like you're doing everything you can, and yet it's still like you're still finding yourselves in these like in these patterns, and so it's like it's a super thin line of trying to not like victimize yourself and push harder while you have this force in your brain that is constantly like pushing back, like
Absolutely.
You know?
And it's treating yourself with that kindness and acknowledgement. Like, I might be at a 3 out of 10 today, so that means if I'm giving 3 out of 10, I'm giving 100% because that's all I got to give today, and that's amazing. And it's being able to check in with yourself on what does that look like for me today, and what does success look like for me today, and not what does this person think it looks like for me today, or what did it look like for me yesterday, and not holding yourself to anything else but how you're feeling now with the tasks upcoming. But it is a message push and pull.
Yeah, well, like have you noticed like kind of like things in your life that like make it better or worse for you, like kind of like maybe things in your environment or like like I don't know, something like someone can say something and like it just hits that spot or something?
Definitely my physical environment. If that's in chaos, so am I. And I notice that is a big one for me, that if everything's chaotic, I'm chaotic, and it's a really negative feedback loop. But also when it comes to interrupting, that I've learned the skill of biting my tongue so I'm not cutting people off all the time, because that's a really hard thing. Or my working memory really sucks. So it's making sure that I do have things in place to remember those pieces of information and following through on the thing and replying to that email just to make sure things are happening and putting those systems in place to sort of catch myself in a lot of ways.
So my experience is it's very hard to manage a lot of different things well. But the tendency is to try to have a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
So how did you take your understanding of what was going on for yourself and then make that leap to turn it into a business, knowing that there was probably going to be a challenge to keep it organized? And
I was honestly really lucky. I work for another executive functioning company and I manage it. And I've been working there for 5-ish years now. And I train their coaches, I do the hiring, and I workshop their caseload with me, which is really cool. So I was able to see a really successful business do what I wanted to do, but it's bigger in a sense because they're all executive functioning. So autism, OCD, ADHD, all the letters is what they support, where I wanted to just focus on ADHD with mine. But I found it really helpful seeing how this all works right in front of me and saying, yes, I want to do that, don't want to do that, but I'm going to do this, and pulling bits and pieces of success right in front of me. So I feel like I got a bit of a cheat sheet when it came to setting up my own business and doing my own thing. I was like, okay, that's what we do. And I could apply it pretty easily in a sense.
different clients, are they mostly kids? Are they adults? Who are you seeing?
Personally, I try and stick to the 16, 17 plus of clients, mainly because if you're below a certain age, I don't want to be something that mom and dad signed you up for. I don't want to be this person on a screen that you don't quite understand why she's there, what we're doing, what the point is. And the buy-in is typically pretty low with younger kids, and that makes it really challenging for all parties. And then parents have expectations, and it can be a whole thing where if you're 16, 17, you're in grade 12, grade 11, grade 12. School's starting to get serious, things are starting to matter a bit more, the relevancy is closer. And university students are my bread and butter. I love university students. So it's a nice way to catch them in grade 11, grade 12 before they hit university to really set them up for success. But a lot of my clients are adults, entrepreneurs, business owners with all the different things on the go, parents who might not necessarily have ADHD but have the ADHD kiddo and they don't know what to do anymore and they're frustrated. So it comes in many different forms.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so what if you are working with a kid who, has ADHD and you are recognizing the parents or one of the parents has it,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't acknowledge that they have that?
That's okay.
Is that just something you would leave, or
Yeah.
would you bring
It's
that
not
up as
my
a not your play?
not my place to say you might have a thing
Yes.
because I'm not a doctor
Right.
by any
I
means.
guess it was the doctor who looked at me and said, the apple doesn't fall far from the
Yeah,
tree.
and sometimes when I meet parents of the kids who I support, I'm like, oh, okay, now I see, yes. But I'm not going to tell a parent they're likely autistic or they're likely ADHD because what do I know, in a sense? But also, if you look like a duck and quack like a duck, you're not a dog. So, little column A, little column B. But I wouldn't say that they do. I might suggest that they go through the process if they're interested in learning about their brains, but I wouldn't call them on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Medication. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's everyone's own personal journey. If you want to be medicated, amazing. If you don't want to be medicated, amazing. And either way, there's tons of resources to back up both sides to get support and help. And medication's really tricky. And the first one might not work, the first two might not work. You have to get the right balance of all the different things. And it can be years before you get the right combination of things that help you. And that can be a really tough journey to go on, or you can luck out. And it changes as your brain chemistry changes on what will work, what will not work. So it's completely up to the person on what they want to do. And either way, I say, great, because that's what you're deciding to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've only tried a couple different kind of ADHD medication. One of them I found made me kind of more amped up in a sense, in a different way. It's kind of hard to explain, but it definitely didn't calm me down. It would focus me, and then especially later throughout the day as I kind of would wear off, I'd feel if I wasn't actively doing something right in the moment.
You feel incredibly restless.
Yeah,
almost.
incredibly restless.
Yep.
And then there's this newer one I tried recently. I'm forgetting the name, but that one was I took it and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is definitely working. But again, I think it would take years of trying different ones and different dosages because it's it worked so incredibly when I take it, and then when I'm on the come down of it throughout the day, it's it's this kind of it was this restless feeling, but it was more in the mind than the other one, and it's that I don't think I had a worse sleep than I did last night. I'm 4 a.m. trying to sweating and
And that's tough. That's tough. And with those meds comes all the side effects.
Yeah.
A lot of the time too. So it's a balance, and the opportunity cost is me focusing for 4 hours of my day worth the next piece, the come down and everything else. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And it's figuring out what balance you're okay with and what you want to compromise in a sense as well. And sleep shouldn't be a compromise. That's an important one.
I would rather have
That's an important one.
Be a little more crazy ADHD.
I remember you saying after that experience, you were quite shocked at how it affected you, and your thought was, how is it that little kids are being given this?
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, the dosages and everything, we don't know.
Right.
But you were quite shocked to have that experience for yourself as a young adult and imagine, a smaller child.
Yeah, I think like especially just like how well it worked and how intense that kind of, because it's like at least for me, like I would take it and it's like for the first hour it's like this very euphoric kind of feeling, because like a lot of these, like they are a form of I don't know, there's plenty of different kinds, but like a lot of these are like are forms of pretty
They're very
intense.
stimulating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The stimulants.
So that was, yeah. So I'm like thinking, like, damn, like I can't imagine like giving this to a kid and then having them, and then of course you have to always be upping the dosage. And so then a kid starts taking this like at 7, 8 years old, and then they're 15, and they're they started at 5 milligrams a day, and now they're up to like 200 milligrams a day, and it's like you don't think of like something like ADHD medication as something that like you'd have these terrible like side effects that you're having these come downs when you're trying to get off. But I think that totally, like, and I've done a bit of research myself and kind of like seeing how people have had those experiences. Like, wow, like I feel like no one really thinks about that aspect of it.
Yeah, and that's really challenging for the kiddo in school who feels great in the morning, and then come lunchtime, things start to go downhill because they're feeling restless or feeling anxious or feeling XYZ of the come down some of the times, and that makes it even harder to focus in school. That makes it even harder to pay attention and even harder to do the work. Then they're disruptive, and then. So yeah, it's a pretty big challenge either way, I think.
Are you ever asked to go into schools to do consultancy with teachers or educators?
I'd love to, but no, not yet. I'm only now sort of letting Revelstoke know that I exist. I'm pretty new as Cortex, but not new in this space as an ADHD coach. So I'm still on a mission of letting people know, hi, I'm here, I exist. I would love to do talks at the secondary school to the grade 12s and educators and parents, and to the women's shelter, and to different wellness clinics and nutritionists and dietitians, like you name it, because ADHD plays a role in all of these different areas. So I'd love to just share all the information I have bundled up in here as freely and as widely as possible.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something too that like a lot of schools could really use, because I think a lot of teachers, at least in like especially in my like elementary school experience, it's like any of the kids who have like a different way of thinking, it's like the teachers don't know how to work with that, and so then I think especially that is where that kind of like guilt and that shame can kind of come in. It's like, oh, whether it's directly said to you or not, the feeling that you get is that like, oh, I'm like who I am isn't right, or just something something wrong with me.
The idea that they're broken.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're not broken, you're human. Like, you're not a toaster. You don't need fixing. Like, there's nothing broken about you. Like, nothing broken.
There's limited resources, I would imagine, that causes these situations where you're then, as a broken person, sent to the broken room.
And you have to go to a different class to do these things, and a different teacher in a different situation. And that really singles out these little kiddos, because then they're being pulled from different classes to different areas, and it's harder for them to make friends because they're not in with everybody else. And that can be really, really challenging. But also teachers, bless their souls, they're so overworked, and they have 30 kids, and maybe 5 of them have different learning abilities. And how do you manage that as a teacher without true additional support that's just focused on those pieces? And I know learning resource teachers exist, and they do an amazing job, but it's still very limited in those situations.
Well, and then like especially like I think it's one of those things, at least that I realized early on, is that like like I would go to school, and it's like I'm sitting in a classroom and information is being given to me, and it's like going, I'm sitting, I'm trying. It's like I'm trying to like flex my brain, like the muscle of my brain, to try to.
You're like, come on, you can do it.
Like, what is happening? But then there's like things that you're passionate about, that you love doing. It's like you can do that, no problem. You can do it for hours on end. So like how did you find, like, what helped you be able to sit down and stay focused on those things that you don't necessarily want to do? Like, how is it like falling and trying to find ways to fall in love with the mundane, or like what's your process?
It depends on the thing in a lot of ways, but my brain loves novelty. Loves novelty. So if I can add novelty into really boring things, it's more successful. Like, I don't love cleaning the kitchen, but if I'm listening to a podcast that I've been looking forward to the next episode, podcasts are out for cleaning. So now I look forward. I'm like, ooh, what chore can I do? Because I want to listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
And then I just start putting different things together and inserting different dopamine hits into really boring activities. Because with the low interest, there's not a whole lot of dopamine happening, where there's those high interest activities that you could do for hours. So it's figuring out ways to insert dopamine into those really boring, mundane things. And maybe those are things that you delegate, and maybe those are just things you don't do, and that's fine. Where if you find it really that challenging to clean the kitchen, maybe the roommate can do that and you take on a different chore, or whatever that looks like, and compromise and say, that is not what my brain wants to do ever. What can I do instead? And find different ways around it, or ask people to do it, or. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you were able to develop these systems for yourself, and then you can just personalize them for your clients and find out what's working for them. And
in a way, I don't really share like my systems, because my systems are mine, and what works for me isn't going to work for you. And I know that, and it's not going to work for you. It's not going to work for whoever else. But having supported hundreds of people with ADHD, I see a lot of similar types of things that tend to work. So I would suggest different sort of strategies I've seen success with to the person who's having a similar-esque issue. I would say, okay, I've seen success with A, B, C, and D. Is there anything you can pull from that? Is there anything you can adapt to make it make sense for your life and for you? Because I don't know what would work best for you. I have no idea. It's up to me to ask you those questions and to bring awareness to those pieces and those roadblocks that you find hard in order to find that system that works best for you. Because I have no idea, so I need to ask those questions and see what works one week, see what works the next week, and trial and error and experiment. And that's how you build up a system that works really well for you, is through that process. It's not waking up one morning and trying a whole new routine, then feeling guilty because you didn't follow through on the routine, and then it creates a whole thing. It's bit by bit by bit, piece by piece.
I've also kind of noticed that, like, I think there can be a lot of like overlap in people's minds between like something like ADHD, like autism, and like ADD. And like symptoms that kind of can overlap, so then people don't really know what they're dealing with, or don't know the kind of the differences. I'm like wondering if, like, in your experience, what you found those kind of like differences are. I mean, I guess that's not really your expertise, but like, does that make sense? Like,
it does. I find at the end of the what letters do I have, what do I not have, what am I experiencing, it all comes down to executive functioning, because that's what's being impacted when you have autism, ADHD, and all those different things, is your prefrontal cortex. That's the management system of your brain. So it's what executive functions are you finding challenging, what roadblocks do you hit and where and why, and how to navigate that, instead of you have this thing, so therefore this thing might work for you, because that's a little too closed off, I find. Where if you address the specific little pieces that they're having trouble with, then they can build on top of that and apply it to more executive functioning processes as well, I find.
Can you describe a little bit more what is going on in the prefrontal cortex?
Yeah. So the short of it is, when you have ADHD, as I said, prefrontal cortex, and that's where your executive functions live. So when you have ADHD, your neurotransmitters are basically shorthanded. So they're going off in different directions, or they're not reaching their end destination totally. And there's different things happening in your brain. And that's, in a sense, ADHD and autism, is that slower neurotransmitters or really fast neurotransmitters, depending on what's going on. But you're essentially shorthanded.
So Gabor Mate from Vancouver, he's written
Scattered Minds. Oh yeah.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on what he says is the reason why people have ADHD?
I like a lot of what he says, but I find it's very clinical in a lot of ways, where he doesn't really take into how individualized ADHD really is and the giant spectrum that it is. And he likes to attribute a lot of it to genetics, which is true in a sense, but also yes, but. I find a lot of what I read with him is yes, but. There's more to this, or more that I want to add, or more that I want to read when it comes to him. He's brilliant, and he's a great resource and a great first few steps, I find, but he's not all-encompassing, I don't think.
I think he did a lot of work with addictions
And trauma.
later went into more ADHD work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The name Cortex.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get the name Cortex ADHD for your business?
Prefrontal cortex. So I just took the word cortex and put a K because Kristen, and good enough.
Hey, this is good. This is your opportunity.
Like, yep. That's as creative as I got.
Yeah.
I went through a few names, but I never really loved any of them. And I didn't want to do a classic like mountain ADHD coaching or like grizzly bear coaching or like something Revelstoke centric coaching.
Stoke coaching.
Yeah, like that just made me, no offense, like roll my eyes a little bit, and I didn't want to give in to just the community piece. But I'm a bit of a neuro nerd. I love learning about the brain. That's one of my rabbit holes I go down very easily, is learning about the brain. So I thought making it a bit more brain centric made sense for me in my knowledge. Mm-hmm.
So, because you mentioned like you don't think it's just like a genetic thing. Like, yes, that can be part of it. Like, what are some other kind of aspects do you think that like maybe at a young age would contribute to that like forming or like
trauma? Childhood trauma can definitely impact certain things. Your parents, the way that they parented you can impact, like there's so many different contextual things that can, as they say, bring out your ADHD. One of my clients never had ADHD until she got into a car accident and hurt her head. So I don't know if she actually has ADHD or just mirrors it with her executive functioning issues. And she isn't too sure either. But she's like, feel ADHD now, didn't before. So it can be really interesting what your brain can do. And also as it develops as you're an adult too, which is why it's missed all the time in younger people, because it manifests when you're older as well. So it really depends on the person. Yeah.
No childhood trauma.
Yeah, speak for yourself. No.
No, I think that I had an opportunity to go on a road trip with my mom.
Oh.
And I had that Scattered Minds book.
Yeah.
And yeah, you miss your mom. I could see.
Oh, I always miss my mom. I always miss my family.
Yeah,
I'm a
them, so
huge
you're still
homebody.
thinking of them?
Yeah, I'm a huge homebody. Yeah. But anyway, you're safe.
That's okay. I caught the emotion in that. It was beautiful. I wanted to share the moment. But I did have the Scattered Minds book with me, and I was on a road trip, so I actually had this extra time to really dive into it with my mom. Say, well, what was going on with you in your life when I was, 1 to 4, ages 1 to 4? What was going on in my development? And, she was able to kind of pull up a few things that I guess I wouldn't have thought of them as traumatic, but her
anything
father
can
had
be
died
traumatic.
of cancer, and so her attention, and I think Gabor Mate had said that it can just be that the parent loves their child, but their attention is focused on something that seems more important than the child, and the child has like almost a superpower to pick up on that attention is not going into their
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you mention that, because I have parents who say, my kid's gone through nothing traumatic, which is true, like nothing as we deem traumatic, but anything can be traumatic. It could be not being invited to that birthday party when you're in grade 2. It could be not being picked at recess. It could be your older sister got a better birthday present than you did this year. It could be those minor things your body remembers. And it's that buildup of those little instances too. So it doesn't have to be this big traumatic event for something to happen. And it could be a family trauma that's been passed down in a sense as well, which is sort of what you were touching on.
I think I just recently sent you an Instagram meme. Is that how you say it? Real? And they were talking about people with ADHD were born here to set an example of how to live in the 5th dimension.
Amazing.
I did quite like it. I like that take on it. Do you remember that? Yeah.
I remember reading a thing that was basically saying that autism and ADHD is another evolution of consciousness, which I thought was really cool. The way that people who are neurodivergent see the world is entirely different. And it's kind of for the better in a lot of ways that I noticed. Like, for example, I would say something and I expect people to read between the lines and know what I'm saying sometimes and not be completely direct and black and white. But when you're autistic, you speak in direct, black and white, then people think you're rude for speaking communicatively and saying what you think. It's just interesting where a lot of neurotypicals don't like that. And it's just very interesting sometimes thinking, why am I beating around the bush to say a thing and that's better than someone saying what they think, what they mean, but that's deemed rude? It's just very interesting.
Which is strange because
Yeah.
it seems so clear in your mind when you're, whatever situation it is. Like, it's like, it seems so clear. And then it's like, when there is that kind of misunderstanding, you're like, oh, what did I do wrong in that situation? How could I communicate, how could I have communicated that, like, differently? So, I don't know, I found, like, those kind of things, like, it really can, I mean, you always end up finding your people, and, who are able to, like, you can kind of understand how your brain works, and, I know that, but I mean, at least I've had so many situations where it's like, you think you're communicating a certain thing or like in a certain way, and it's like misread so far off, and it can create these situations. It's like, how did I even like get here? Like, someone's like mad at you or something. You're like, I just wanted to go for coffee.
Yeah.
Like, it's simple things like that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And communication is a huge challenge because people think they're communicating the right thing, but whoever's ears it's falling on, it can be heard completely differently, which is really challenging a lot of the time too.
Well, and in society, I think that there's a standard way of communicating, which we've had to fit into that.
Exactly.
But I think you can reach a certain point in life where you're thinking, I don't actually want to fit into that anymore because I can see how these people would actually benefit from trying a different way.
A different approach.
Taking a new approach really reveals how many systems in society should probably collapse. I'm speaking extreme right now, but in some situations it's probably true. Like, I'm thinking back to the system of education.
Oh my gosh, it needs a whole paradigm shift. It needs a whole gets knocked over, rebuilt from the beginning.
Okay,
I think.
At this point in this
I think it needs a brand new, a whole new thing.
What you think education should look like. You dreamed about it, apparently.
In a sense, but it's more so the support that exists for the students is my main battle.
So there is the support, and that is your battle. But if we're just having fun with the idea of brainstorming, just thinking about even the environment.
Yeah.
So,
like flexibility, and not having classrooms be as overwhelming as they are. Like, so many posters and stickers and things and competitions to raise your hand and participate in class. Like, there's a lot going on in classrooms where if students could have flexible deadlines and be able to hand in things as they seem fit. Or if they have to write an essay, make that one of the options. Say, here's the topic. You can either write an essay, record a video, do a one-on-one conversation with me, do a PowerPoint, draw a picture, and give many different mediums and opportunities to display knowledge. Because not everyone displays knowledge the exact same way. And that's a big piece of it too, is making sure that people are in their strengths, showing how they learn the information, that they know the information, and not just check mark, they did ABC correctly. And opening it up that way, I think would be really important too. And the ability to self-advocate. And so many students are afraid of their teachers. So many students are afraid to ask for help still and think that something's wrong with them if they need help, and really normalizing those steps and really normalizing who understands this, who still has questions, who still needs support, and making people ask questions. I did that in one of my classrooms. It wasn't what question, do you have any questions? It was, what questions do you have? How can I clarify this more for you? Do you know where you need to start on this? Do you know what your first few steps are? And asking those types of questions so the students can say, actually, I don't know my first few steps, but I do know what I'm supposed to do. Then you're like, okay, I know how to support you now. So, and then you can help them that way, rather than, do you get it? Do you have any questions? It's very closed off, I find.
I knew you had a lot to say about that. Thank you for sharing that. No, it's important not feel shy from those topics.
Absolutely.
And I think there are a lot of teachers who would agree with that, and they feel so stuck in a system, and they don't know how to go against their administrators or whatever.
Yeah, because their hands are tied in a lot of ways, educators and teachers, which is really hard and challenging. And that doesn't mean they don't want to support these kids. That doesn't mean that they don't have that want or that drive to support these kids, but they just don't have the capacity to support those 36 kids in their classroom at the exact same time doing the exact same thing. Smaller classroom sizes.
What are your thoughts on that, on education environment?
I mean, for sure, like I had a really tough, experience in elementary school, but I was lucky enough to go. I went to this alternative school for all of my high school years, and so we had that like going to that school. It was like, this is how it should be. So I was really lucky to have that because we just had the most incredible teachers, and pretty much exactly what you just described was the school that I got to go to. So, but it's funny then because like when I meet people nowadays, like, oh, what school did you go to? And like I feel like, oh, I went to an alternative school, and they're like,
fancy.
Yeah, you went to an alternative school, and then I have to do the whole explaining thing. Like, we did this, and it's like, so you had flexible schedules? I don't think that's an alternative school.
There was judgment around it.
Yeah, for sure. But it's like, I don't know. I like through that experience going there, like I learned so much about myself and about like how just to communicate with like adults. Like I meet people my age and they still don't know how to ask for help and to even like talk to people like a few years older than them. It's like I don't know, like I live in West Kelowna with my I have a film company out there with my roommate Riley, who's my age, and then my other two partners in the production company, Evan and Teddy, who are 30 years old and they're married, and it's like I have no problem getting along with them, and so I feel really blessed that I got to have that experience, and it kind of gave me a bit more of a self-awareness, kind of like notice things, things in my brain, and that's the thing too is like I'm always noticing finding new things about how my brain works and how it ticks. I'm like, and I think obviously you've been on this journey a bit longer than I have. Like, are you still finding things like about yourself that you're like, yeah.
It's always changing as you grow older and as your brain changes and as you change and as you get more experiences and experience different things. Oh yeah, it's always changing. Like one thing I didn't think was a thing for me became a thing for me. And one thing that used to be a thing is no longer a thing for me. So it's like, okay, so we're just navigating as we go. And that's a big thing that I talk to clients about is we have a system that works now. But in a few months, this might not work for you. And that's great and that's fine. Then we can experiment and see what's working, see what's not, and adjust and change these things as we go. Because it's not a blanket statement. Okay, cool, I have my system. We're going to go off and ADHD is good now. Like it so doesn't work like that because it's always changing and it's always figuring out all those different pieces or things that you didn't realize were due to ADHD, which are as you get more educated. All those things, absolutely.
It's fast as a journey.
Sure is. And I feel so grateful to be on this journey, well, have been on this journey with hundreds of people as they go through their own ADHD process and learning about it and how their brains work and the systems that work for them is a really, really cool thing as well.
Can you share us? Oh, sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, it's gotta be cool because it's like, as you're like helping these people and like and teaching them, I'm sure you're kind of learning a little bit about yourself through that experience
Always.
as well.
Always. And sometimes after sessions, it's like, that's really good advice. Maybe I should try that because they will suggest something that works for them or something that they realize works well for them. And I'm like, that's so smart. Okay, brilliant. Like that podcast tour thing. That wasn't a Kristen original. That was from one of my clients 2 years ago that she used to do that. Then I started doing that and it still works for me. So you can learn all these different strategies from all these different people that have tried different things. And that makes it a really cool way to support people because I feel like I have a plethora of strategies in my head, but they won't necessarily work for you, but it's a good base off of suggestion to be like, what about these types of things and see where it goes from there, just to try and get the ball rolling, I find.
Can you think of a success story?
Oh, many. many, and I don't mean to sound overly confident, but it's their success that I feel like I had my little streak part in to help, but it's all them. They're the ones who do the work, not me, right? But one of my university students is actually graduating this year. When he came to me, he was about to fail out of computer science. He took all of his courses all the times that he could, but he kept failing, kept failing, kept failing. And he can't fail again or else he's kicked out of university. So he ended up on my caseload and now he's graduating. And it's just night and day because he knows how to study. He knows what works for them. He knows when to take breaks. He knows when he's feeling overwhelmed. He knows when he's starting to feel burnout and how to avoid it and what to do to refill his battery during the school year. So he's not plummeting anymore, which is really awesome to see. One of my mom clients, she has 2 neurodivergent autistic kids who live at home. She has ADHD and getting her master's in music. So she has so many things on the go. But being able to help her prioritize what's important when everything is was a huge game changer for her. And using the priority matrix she loves of urgent, not important, urgent, that whole matrix was really helpful for her. And yeah, I find success everywhere, like even the small wins. Like one of my students right now doesn't follow through on anything ever, and that's okay. But they followed through on something yesterday, and that was amazing because it's just that one step in that direction, and they were so stoked on it that they texted me as a whole thing that they're just excited that they actually did the thing. And that's how it starts, is doing those pieces and figuring out what those roadblocks are and why.
Well, and having the encouragement of someone who's, it feels like, you're on the journey with them and they can share in that little successes.
And I build in accountability into my business model. So anyone who works with me basically has access to me. And at the end of each session, it's how would you like to be held accountable to what you want to do? Would a daily check-in be helpful on how was XYZ? Or every 3 days, would that be helpful? Or do you want me to text you 4 times on a Sunday to make sure you're doing the thing? And sometimes it's very hands-on, sometimes it's very hands-off in terms of accountability, because having that external person to check in with you in a non-judgy kind of way is really helpful, because there's no trouble if you don't follow through. Like, there's no negative side of it. It's okay, what were you doing instead? What decisions did you make instead? Was that a good decision to make? Great, cool, because sometimes your schedule changes and life changes, and that's totally fine. But it's bringing awareness into why they're doing what they're doing, and that helps create that motivation to follow through on other things that they want to be doing that are of lower interest. So it really depends on the person, but yeah, a lot of small wins, and those are my favorite. Like, there are like those big, beautiful stories that exist on my caseload, but I love the small ones that just those ticks in the right direction are just amazing to see, I think.
You were talking about one of your clients who has this like the urgent, not so urgent. Like, could you explain that a little bit more? Because that's also, it's like prioritizing things. It's like
it's a priority matrix.
Yeah, exactly. It can be so hard to like know where to start when you've got so much. Like, you could explain that a little bit.
So with a few of my clients, I'll bring up like a white blank task board thing and 4 quadrants: urgent and important. So the things that you need to do now, they're important, you got to do those. Those are probably today things or things on a sensitive timeline, those types of items. Then there's urgent, not important. On a timeline, it still needs to get done, but you have some flexibility on when. Like, I know taking my dog for a walk is always urgent, but it's not necessarily the most important thing they need to do in that given moment. So he can be urgent, not important, because I can do that when I want to. He's not as time sensitive. That's not a good example, but still. Then there is the non-urgent, important, and non-urgent, not important. So things that don't have a timeline, things that don't have that sense of urgency behind them, but you still need to do them. So that'd be urgent and important.
Okay, so dirty laundry.
Where would that go?
Where would that go?
Are you out of clothes? Then
Yeah,
it would move over.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
and are people noticing?
Yeah.
Their clothes are dirty, so
Right.
that would change it.
Right.
And then where's the discernment piece? And are people with ADHD, do they have a harder time with discernment?
They do. And that's a conversation when we create these matrices together for the week. It's, what do you find urgent and important? What do you find urgent and not important? what needs to happen for this to become more urgent? Is there a thing that needs to happen for it to move over? Or if it's truly non-urgent and non-important, do you really have to do it? Can someone else do it? Can you delegate it? It can be a different conversation with those items because they just tend to linger a lot of the time, I find.
These are excellent strategies. You mentioned earlier about romanticizing ADHD. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, there's a lot of ADHD gives you superpowers because you can hyperfixate on a thing for hours. And it's like, yes, you can hyperfixate on a really interesting thing to you for hours, but insert that with something that actually needs to be done, like studying. You're not going to hyperfixate on that. So people think it's the coolest thing in the world, or it's really cute that you procrastinate. It's cute that you're forgetful and that you don't remember how to do things, when really it's extremely frustrating, debilitating, and embarrassing when those things happen. It's not cute.
Yeah, when you're mentioning that aspect, it's making me think of comments like, you're flaky. Or, like you said, oh, that's so cute that she does that. And that makes you feel less.
Yeah, and that's really hurtful to hear because guaranteed the person isn't trying to forget, the person isn't trying to be late. Guaranteed they've been thinking about the appointment for the entire week, the entire morning. They probably have nothing but stressing about that one thing that they need to do at 1 o'clock and have their entire day around that one thing they need to do at 1 o'clock, and then they're still late and they still miss the bus. Like, yeah, and it is awful, and it's really brutal to go through a lot of the time, and it can really suck. And it's not cute in any way, and it can be really hard to go through, and it's really embarrassing for a lot of adults showing up late all the time, and then they're like, oh, you're the late one, and it's like, great, now I have that label. And it can be really hard a lot of the time, I think. And social media just sort of glorifies a lot of these elements of being autistic or having ADHD.
Right. I'm thinking of Love on the Spectrum, actually.
Yeah,
it's coming to mind, which,
I've seen that show. Yeah.
I must admit, I do love that show. I love these people, and it's interesting to watch their journeys and also their parents trying to help them, grow into adulthood. And I'm sure that they are having the thoughts of one day we're going to be gone. I want my kids to be able to
independent
be
and
independent.
autonomous.
And so there's that balance of, these reality shows and not exploiting these people and their challenges, and at the same time, the educational piece.
Exactly. And Abby, for example, like her song made me emotional at the end of the last season when she sang it. Oh my gosh, it was beautiful. But also, she's a good example of the parents are always there in every single scene. The parents are there. They're off to the side, giving them tons of space and alone time, but they're there. And a piece that isn't talked about a lot of the time is just because it looks like you don't need support doesn't mean you don't have support behind the scenes. And there's so much more to it. When you see the independent, autonomous person, they're not exactly showing all the work that went into having that happen and all the different therapies and all the different pieces that this person has gone through in order to have that sense of independence. That those pieces aren't necessarily showing up on the TV show, which I understand because that's not good TV. But but yeah, there's just more to it, I find. But I do love that show.
Yeah.
It's so cute. Oh, I love that show.
Yeah. What do you see next for Cortex? Like you mentioned, maybe consultancy in schools. What are your dreams for your business?
My dreams, honestly, is to let everyone know that I exist. I'm a wealth of knowledge and to use me. And I would love to go into different workplaces, doing neurodiversity workshops in the workplace, accommodations in universities, Okanagan College. I feel like it's endless because ADHD plays a role in every single situation. So I would just love to be able to share my knowledge as openly and as willingly as possible and not safeguard anything that I'm sitting on.
And I mean, I imagine that you'll be successful. I imagine that a lot of people will be contacting you.
Giving away free information isn't the best business model, I understand, but also.
You are professional, you can charge for your services.
Exactly.
And you are.
Exactly.
But do you see yourself then hiring additional coaches to work with you?
I don't know. Probably not. Maybe, because I already do hire and train coaches with the other company that I work for. I do that. I'm good at it. It's successful. But I kind of like the idea of keeping Cortex just me, in a sense, at least for now. And I think I could create wait lists and just slowly build my authority in my field, and maybe one day transition away from coaching 20 people at the same time and maybe have a selective 5 or 6 and do more in schools and more in the community and pieces like that. So yeah, it's a pretty big idea of what I'd like to do, and I'm excited to see where it goes, if anywhere. So I'm just excited for it. Yeah.
No, I'm excited for you. Yeah. Well, I have lots of questions also about you as a person outside of the ADHD world.
Yes.
You mentioned about what you studied in university, so can we just tap into that a little bit more?
Sure.
And were you able to pursue any of those
In a sense.
passions?
Yeah, I went to Ghana, did the working in an orphanage teaching English thing for a while, which was amazing and transformative. It was actually the first time I left Canada by myself, was to go to Ghana. And my parents were like, Europe's nice. Like, there's other places that aren't totally by yourself, and Africa. I was like, but Africa. So that was amazing. And it's a lot. It's a lot. And doing that NGO world, amazing people can do that work. I just didn't think that work was fully for me in a lot of ways. So I'm glad that I did it, but had the realization, I don't think this is my alignment.
It had nothing to do with the ADHD tendencies and having to organize trips and
No.
travel and all that.
No, it was just more on the lines of, I like the one-on-one support. I like the closeness of that, and I'm really successful when it comes to creating those types of relationships. I also worked on the downtown east side of Vancouver for a while during COVID and the pandemic, and as a shelter resource worker. So working again with people one-on-one with different trauma, addictions, neurodivergencies, and making plans with them to either change their situation or be better within their situation, whatever they wanted. It didn't matter to me. It was up to them and what they wanted. But it was really, really neat, and I just kept coming back to personalized support one way or another. Whatever job I was doing, it slowly turned into personalized support. So I was like, maybe I should stick with this. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you found your place and what you're passionate about, and you've been able to have success already, and I'm really excited for you to grow your business.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for taking time to share with us today. Yeah.
I'm really grateful for the opportunity. First interview done.
Yay! Great.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, we look forward to seeing all the viewers again another time. This has been Kristen Begg in Revelstoke on location with Bowen and Mimi, and thanks for tuning in.